Free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
To step back in time, this is the time when Britain entered Jaffa in 1917. And can you see the building behind it, the Serai, that I was pointing at before? I want you to keep in mind only four columns in the front of that building, because they have a certain meaning. So when the British arrived in Jaffa, they wanted to display their military force. Of course, they were an army. They had. This was in 1917. And we had nothing. We had only our spirit, our land, and ownership, and our courage, and our history, and our roots. Go to the next slide, please. This is two more slides of British presence in Palestine. The one on the right is kind of difficult to show with this slide. That is taken from inside the wall of the old city of Jerusalem, and through the opening, if you can see, if it was clear, reasonably clear, as a Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem. Can you see it?
Yes.
Barely. Never mind, keep going. Now, as we look at Jaffa just before the Nakba, Jaffa on the right-hand side was essentially a developed city with a very mixed population of Muslims, Christians, and Jews. And Jews, Arab Jews, Palestinian Jews. And they were forward. As you can see on the picture on the left, they were advertising beauty products in 1945. On the right-hand side is a picture of a group of us from the school in Jaffa who volunteered. I was 14 and a half years old, and some of my friends, you can recognize the man on the right-hand side. That was me at 14 and a half. We wanted to help, so what could we do? We volunteered, and we got students from the three boys' schools in Jaffa, the Friars, the Orthodox, and the Aimaria. And Aimaria was the largest, and we learned to do first aid. We were too young to. So we learned to do first aid. We arranged to have a group of nurses come and train us in one of the conference rooms of the Al-Difa newspaper to learn to do TOS. So one of the first things that's important to learn as a first aid is to use a tourniquet to stop bleeding. So at age 14 and a half, I learned to use a tourniquet, which means if someone was bleeding here, I had to use a tourniquet to stop the bleeding until he could be taken to hospital. And there was with us a group of Yugoslav volunteers who came to Palestine to essentially protect us against the attacks of the three Jewish terrorist groups, all of whom ended up being parts of the Israeli government. And going to the next slide. The other thing about Jaffa is we had a fabulous beach. We had a society which was advanced. So there are, I call these not bathing beauties, but Jaffa beauties, Palestinian young women in a beach in Jaffa. And that was in a beach to the right of which was the beach where at age 5, I learned to swim. At age 5, I learned to swim. My father taught me how to swim in the sea, not in a swimming pool, in the sea. And the sea was next to us, just behind the three cemeteries, was the most fabulous beach, which was like a half moon, and it was fabulous. And as children, he would take us in the morning before we went to school to have a swim early, then have breakfast in a small cafe which was called Hanna Syriani. Hanna, that was his name. And he had the cafe, he made tea, he made hummus and food and eggs. We had breakfast, had a shower, clothed ourselves, went to school, and I learned to swim there. Go on to the next slide. Now, Jaffa was highly developed. Can you see this ultra-modern picture? Some of you may have seen it before. It's called Cinema Al-Hamra, Al-Hamra Cinema. It was a cinema house, a theater, built in 1936 in Jaffa. And Palestine was developed, was a modern country, was not an empty place as they keep repeating with Hasbara. Hasbara is the Israeli propaganda that's given after several generations of training people about these lies, these creations, these inventions, to try and prove that there was nothing there, and so don't worry about it. But the don't worry about it was actually not so the case, because in July 18, 1948, really only 2 months after the worst part of the first Nakba took place, David Ben-Gurion, who was the founder and the first prime minister of Israel, was being questioned in the Knesset, in a new building, Knesset, their parliament. You know, what about all of the Palestinians that we have killed and we have by people and we have chased out of their home? You know what his answer was? His answer was, the old will die and the young will forget. I was 15 years old at that time. I did not forget. I am now old. I have 3 generations below me, children, grandchildren, and 2 great-grandchildren. And the young, have you forgotten?
No.
No way, no way. That is part of what we are, who we are, and our roots. So go to the next one. Now, this is an earlier picture of the center of Jaffa, and again, with the Serai and with the 4 columns. Go on to the next one. Now, what you see of the Serai right now is only the 4 columns, and they're not the original columns. What happened in January 1948, less than 2 months after the United Nations partition decision was made, 3 jeeps, 2 of them filled with explosives and 1 with just drivers, came in and drove to the side, on the left-hand side of this building, what used to be this building, and this was on a early Sunday morning, and 2 of the drivers of 2 of the jeeps got out and got into the other jeeps, and they set the explosives and they ran away, and they destroyed that whole building. So what Israel is trying to do in here, they've tried to commemorate and create a new memorial, a fake memorial. Essentially, it is a memorial to the murder, to the massacre that took place among all of the orphans who were at that time in that building, in the Sarai. The Sarai was used as an orphanage, and there were a number of orphans in it and a couple of their protectors, their seniors, and they were all killed. That was the first massacre in Yemen in January 1948. January 1948. At the same time, there was a massacre at 3 places outside Haifa, and they were attacking the Arab petroleum refinery, the oil refinery in Haifa, that were going in a train to the job, and they stopped the job and they blew it up, and they killed a lot of them. And they did the same thing a week later, and the British police, the British army, who were supposed to keep the peace, did nothing. They only acted against those 3 terrorist groups when they attacked Britain, or when they attacked the British government. Go on to the next slide. Now, this is another picture of Manshi in Jaffa. Remember, all of these houses, there's something long standing in the horizon there. It's a minaret of the masjid of Hassan Bey, the mosque of Hassan Bey. And going to the next slide. There are two pictures here of Manshiyeh. The right-hand side, Manshiyeh before April 1948, and his on right-hand side, and it shows the beach, and Manshiyeh after 1948. And what can you see in the distance that is still standing up? You can see the same minaret way up in the distance. They actually massacred almost everybody who was in Manshiyeh. And the way they attacked them, we didn't have any weapons. This was between January and April 1948, and they were attacking us. But on the 18th of April, a few days after the massacre of Deir Yassin, which was another massacre in which they massacred almost everybody in Deir Yassin, and they tried to hide it by throwing the bodies in water wells and taking some of the young men who stayed behind, who ran away with bullets, and put them without their clothes, only with their underpants, on the back of a truck, and their hands tied up over their head, and then they paraded them in West Jerusalem first to try and show the Jews who were living in West Jerusalem, which was a mixed society. And they paraded them in East Jerusalem, which was the old part of Jerusalem, to show the Palestinians, look, this is what happened. This is what we can do. They terrorized the whole country. They terrorized the whole country with massacres. Going back to Jaffa, the way they leveled Jaffa, they did not attack it. They did not attack from the roads. They attacked it with short cannons, and they would go from the side of the house, blow the side of the house, throw grenades, and kill the people, go blow the side of the house next door, and next door, and next door. That's how they leveled Manshiyeh. Does this remind you anything about Gaza? What's happening now? Gaza right now is a modern replica of what they did in Jaffa, in Manshiyeh, in 1948, in April. So go on, please. And this is another picture of Manshiyeh on the left, and this is how our terrorized people, we had no defense. The city council of Jaffa, who was headed by a Palestinian by the name of Dr. Yusuf Haikal. He had a PhD from Oxford. He was ordered by the city council to leave Jaffa in March and April and go to Cairo and address the League of Nations, the League of Arab Nations, جامعة الدول العربية, and to ask for them to give us help, to give us weapons to defend ourselves. They had no capability. Their governments decided that they would go and try to protect Palestine after 15 May, when Britain left. By the 15th of May, Israel had chased nearly 600,000 Palestinians out of their homes. Nearly 98% of the population of Jaffa and the village around it. I lived in the southern part of Jaffa. In the southern part of Jaffa, when at age 15, I was serving as a first aid standby person in the south of Jaffa, because next to us was an Israeli colony, and it was built as a colony. Let's not forget the name, because it's not a country, it's a colony. It's a colonial regime. They built this colony called Bat Yam. Bat Yam. Bat means bait in Hebrew, yam, or in French it was called Bitbegan. In Arabic it was called Bitbegan. And the tallest building in in that colony, which was literally 2 miles away from our house, was a beer brewery. It was built on 5 stories. Beer breweries don't need to be built on 5 stories, but it was built on 4 stories. And the northern face of that beer brewery did not have any windows. Did not have any windows. It had gun slits. You know what gun slits are? They are essentially openings which are vertical and very narrow, where a gunman or a shooter can be behind and he would not be exposed, but he is able to shoot. And it was as far as we were from there. So we were surrounded, and there were a number of Israeli colonies beside Bat Yam. North of it, there was Horon, it's now a big area, and others all around Jaffa. And they had to occupy and destroy Jaffa because it was a big city, number one, and it was part of the questioned areas around the United Nations partition. Should it be an Arab country, part of Palestine or not? So they decided to do that. And when they attacked us from 3 ways, from the north, east, and south. The sea was west, and we were escaping. We were escaping the death and the massacre that was happening in Manchia. Go on to the next. We escaped on a boat like this. We were taken from the port to a boat that was outside. That was a wooden boat that had nearly 3,000 people on it, and they were crowded like this. And we ran out of water in the first 6 hours. In the first night, a woman who was probably as close to me as this person is, with a lot of people in between, who was pregnant, lost her baby. And a group of women surrounded her, cleaned her, wrapped a dead child with a wrap, and in the morning of the next day, they gave him a burial at sea.